At 11:47 a.m. Eastern Time, November 15th, 2025, inside the war room of 1 Hogan Place, Manhattan District Attorney's Office, New York Attorney General Letitia James stares at 3 classified folders marked Urgent Federal Overlay. In 73 minutes, President Trump's directive will officially launch the largest political investigation in modern American history. The target isn't just Jeffrey Epstein's network anymore. It's a web that connects 2 former presidents, a major banking empire, and the very foundations of American power. But here's what Trump doesn't know yet. James has been 3 moves ahead for months, and she's about to turn his own weapon against him. The phone on her mahogany desk erupts with the sound that changes everything. It's Attorney General Pam Bondi calling from Washington, and her voice cuts through the Manhattan morning like a blade. Letitia, we need to talk, now. At 11:48 a.m., James picks up the secure line. Through the bulletproof windows of her 15th floor office, she can see the Statue of Liberty standing defiant in the harbor. But today, Liberty feels more fragile than ever. Pam, I assume this is about the president's Truth Social announcement, James says, her voice steady as surgical steel. The silence on the other end speaks volume. Then Bondi's response lands like a hammer. Jay Clayton will be leading the federal probe into Epstein's connections. Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, J.P. Morgan Chase. The president wants answers, and he wants them fast. James doesn't flinch. She's been preparing for this moment since the House Oversight Committee released those damaging Epstein emails. The ones mentioning Trump. The ones that made the president desperate enough to launch a counteroffensive. But what Bondi doesn't know is that James has been sitting on a nuclear bomb of her own. A cache of sealed documents from her 2022 civil fraud investigation that connects the Epstein network to Trump's financial empire. At 11:52 a.m., James ends the call and immediately activates what her team calls the Fortress Protocol. Within 90 seconds, her chief of staff, Malik Washington, is standing in her doorway, his tablet loaded with the president's latest social media tirade. Ma'am, it's already trending worldwide, Epstein-gate. Trump investigates. The media is calling it the political battle of the century. James studies the screen, showing Trump's Truth Social post, demanding investigations into Jeffrey Epstein's involvement and relationship with Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, Reid Hoffman, J.P. Morgan Chase, and many other people. But she notices something crucial that everyone else missed. The president didn't mention one critical name, Ghislaine Maxwell, and that omission tells her everything she needs to know. She turns to Washington, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carries more authority than a shout. Get me the Maxwell files, the sealed ones. If they want to play in the deep end, they better know how to swim. Hidden behind a false panel in James's office, safe are 847 pages of financial records from Deutsche Bank. Documents that show a pattern of transactions between Epstein-connected entities and Trump properties dating back to. At 12:15 p.m., James makes the call that changes everything. She dials a number that doesn't officially exist, a secure line to the Southern District of New York. On the other end, a prosecutor who has been quietly building a case that makes the Epstein investigation look like a warm-up act. Michael, she says to U.S. Attorney Michael Chen, I think it's time we played our ace. The president just declared war on the very network he was part of. Are you ready to show him what real justice looks like? The response is immediate. Letitia, we've been ready for 2 years. The question is, are you prepared for the fallout when they realize you've been investigating them while they've been investigating you? While Trump is focused on Clinton and J.P. Morgan, James has been quietly building a RICO case that encompasses the entire Epstein financial network. A case that includes previously sealed court documents showing Trump personally guaranteed loans for Epstein properties. Documents that show the president wasn't just a social acquaintance of Jeffrey Epstein, he was a financial partner. At 12:23 p.m., the first domino falls. The House Oversight Committee, led by Democratic Chairman Jamie Raskin, announces an emergency session for 3 p.m. Their agenda item reads simply, Presidential conflicts of interest in federal investigations. But this isn't about constitutional procedure. This is about political survival. Because Raskin has the receipts. Bank records showing that Trump's Mar-a-Lago property was used as collateral for an Epstein real estate deal in 2003. Flight logs showing Trump on Epstein's plane, not just socially but for business meetings with potential investors. And most damaging of all, a recorded phone conversation from 2005 where Trump discusses cleaning up Jeffrey's mess. In Washington, Speaker Mike Johnson is frantically trying to manage the fallout from the bipartisan Epstein files discharge petition. Johnson knows that if those files are released, they won't just implicate Democrats. They'll expose the entire Washington establishment's connections to the Epstein network. The only question is whether Trump realizes he just lit a fuse that leads back to his own doorstep. At 12:45 p.m., James receives an encrypted text message from an unlisted number. It contains just 4 words: "The vault is open." She knows exactly what this means. Someone with access to the sealed federal Epstein files has just decided that if Trump wants to weaponize justice, they'll show him what real weaponization looks like. Within minutes, a secure email appears in James's inbox. The sender is anonymous, but the attachment is explosive: 73 pages of previously classified FBI interview summaries from the original Epstein investigation. Names, dates, location, a roadmap of corruption that reaches into the highest levels of American government and business. And on page 47, a detail that makes James's blood run cold. A witness statement describing a 204 meeting at Trump Tower where Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump, and J.P. Morgan executive Jess Staley discussed mutually beneficial arrangements for high net worth client management. The witness, Ghislaine Maxwell herself, cooperating with federal investigators before her own conviction. At 1:15 p.m., James makes the most dangerous decision of her career. She walks to her office window, looking out at the city she's sworn to protect, and makes a call that will either save American democracy or destroy her career forever. "Governor Hochul," she says into the secure phone, "I need to invoke Article 63C of the executive law. I'm calling an emergency joint state-federal task force. We have evidence of ongoing federal crimes that require immediate state intervention." Kathy Hochul's response is immediate and chilling. "Letitia, are you absolutely certain about this? Once you cross this line, there's no going back." James's voice doesn't waver. "Governor, they already have. The difference is, now I have evidence that they've been lying about it for 20 years. The president just declared war on a criminal conspiracy he was part of. It's time to show him what justice without fear looks like." But even as James prepares for the battle of her life, she knows the real danger isn't what they might do to her. It's what happens if she does nothing. Because buried in those FBI files is something that chills her to the bone. Evidence that the Epstein network wasn't just about trafficking and blackmail. It was about influencing American foreign policy and Supreme Court decisions through compromised officials. At 1:33 p.m., James's secure phone rings again. This time it's Jay Clayton calling from the Southern District of New York. His voice is tight with tension she's never heard before. "Letitia, we have a problem. Someone just leaked the president's Truth Social post to the Epstein victims' attorneys. They're demanding that the federal investigation include Trump's own connections to Jeffrey. This isn't just a political problem anymore. It's a legal nightmare that could bring down half of Washington." James feels a cold smile cross her face, because she knows something Clayton doesn't. Those leaks didn't come from Democratic operatives or vengeful FBI agents. They came from someone much more dangerous, Jeffrey Epstein's own lawyers, who have been sitting on a cache of attorney-client privileged documents. They're now legally free to release these documents because of Trump's public statements about the case. The president just destroyed his own legal protections by demanding a federal investigation. At 1:47 p.m., the news breaks simultaneously across every major network. CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, all reporting the same explosive story. Federal judge orders immediate review of presidential conflicts in Epstein investigation. The judge is Cameron Curry of the Eastern District of Virginia, the same judge currently overseeing the cases against James Comey and Letitia James herself. But here's the twist that nobody saw coming. Judge Curry just recused herself from the Comey and James cases, citing newly discovered evidence of potential prosecutorial misconduct by acting U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan. And the evidence? A sealed affidavit showing that Halligan was present at Mar-a-Lago in 2019 when Trump first discussed dealing with the Epstein problem. The hunter has become the hunted. The prosecutor is now the prosecuted, and Letitia James is holding the cards that could reshape American justice forever. At 2:15 p.m., as the media firestorm reaches a crescendo, James does something that nobody expects. She calls a press conference. Standing behind the podium in the marble halls of the New York State Attorney General's office, with the flags of New York and the United States flanking her, James looks directly into the cameras. Her voice carries the weight of history. Ladies and gentlemen, for the past 3 years, my office has been conducting a comprehensive investigation into financial crimes involving Jeffrey Epstein's network. Today, I'm announcing that this investigation has uncovered evidence of federal crimes that reach into the highest levels of American government, including connections that involve the current President of the United States. The room erupts, reporters shout questions, camera flashes explode, and somewhere in Washington, the President realizes his attempt to weaponize justice has just backfired spectacularly. But James isn't finished. She reaches for a thick manila folder marked with the presidential seal. I'm also announcing that my office will be releasing in coordination with federal authorities previously classified documents that show the full scope of the Epstein criminal enterprise. Documents that reveal how Jeffrey Epstein wasn't just a sex trafficker. He was running a financial influence operation that compromised American officials for 2 decades. The words hang in the air like a death sentence for the old order. Because what James is describing isn't just corruption, it's treason, wrapped in the veneer of high society networking. At 2:33 p.m., the president's response comes through an emergency White House briefing. Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt, visibly shaken, reads a statement. The president maintains that any investigation into his past business relationships with Jeffrey Epstein will show that he was never involved in any criminal activity, but the denial feels hollow. Because 30 seconds after Leavitt finishes speaking, the Associated Press breaks the story that changes everything. Federal prosecutors in Manhattan have unsealed a 2019 cooperation agreement between Jeffrey Epstein and the Justice Department, signed just weeks before his death. The cooperation agreement that was buried, hidden, forgotten until today. The cooperation agreement that names Donald Trump as a subject of interest. At 3:17 p.m., James receives a call from FBI Director Christopher Wray. His voice is grim with the weight of what he's about to reveal. General James, I need you to know that we've just received a court order from the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. They're ordering the immediate release of all sealed Jeffrey Epstein investigation materials. This includes materials that were previously protected under national security classifications. The implications hit James like a physical blow, because she knows what's in those files. Evidence that the Epstein network wasn't just about sex trafficking, it was about foreign intelligence operations, compromised federal judges, and financial schemes that funded political campaigns. At 3:45 p.m., the first bombshell lands. The Washington Post publishes a story that makes the Pentagon Papers look like a parking ticket. Sealed court documents reveal Epstein network influenced federal judicial appointments. The story details how Jeffrey Epstein, working with compromised federal officials, helped orchestrate the appointment of federal judges favorable to his associates' legal interests. The story quotes directly from sealed FBI surveillance transcripts, where Epstein discusses our friends in black robes and their understanding of mutually beneficial arrangements. And in one particularly damning excerpt, a voice identified as Donald Trump discusses how Jeffrey's judicial friends helped resolve a federal investigation into Trump University. This isn't politics anymore. This is the complete exposure of a shadow system. At 4:23 p.m., the situation reaches critical mass when someone unexpected enters the game. Ghislaine Maxwell's attorneys announced that their client is prepared to provide additional testimony to federal prosecutors in light of recent public statements by federal officials. Translation: Maxwell has been sitting in federal prison with information that could destroy everyone who ever touched the Epstein network. And Trump's public statements just freed her to talk about all of it. The chessboard doesn't just explode, it vaporizes. Because Maxwell isn't just a convicted accomplice. She's the keeper of 20 years of secrets that could bring down presidents, Supreme Court justices, federal prosecutors, and banking executives. At 4:47 p.m., Letitia James makes one final call. Not to a prosecutor, not to a politician, but to the one person who has been quietly waiting for this moment longer than anyone else. Virginia Giuffre. Virginia James says into the secure phone, "I think it's time the truth came out. All of it. Are you ready to finish what you started?" Giuffre's response comes without hesitation. "General James, I've been ready for 25 years. The question is whether America is ready to hear what really happened to our justice system, while everyone was looking the other way." As the afternoon sun sets behind the Manhattan skyline, Letitia James stands at her office window, looking out at a city that's about to witness the largest political earthquake in American history. Because she knows what's coming next. Not just more revelations, not just more indictments, but the complete exposure of a system so corrupt that it requires a full reconstruction of American justice itself. At 5:15 p.m., as James prepares to leave her office for what might be the last normal evening of her career, she receives one final message. It's a text from an unknown number, containing just a link to a video file. The video shows Jeffrey Epstein in what appears to be a secure facility, speaking directly to the camera. "If you're watching this," Epstein says in the video, his voice eerily calm, "it means someone in the federal government has decided to use my crimes for political purposes. What they don't know is that I've documented everything. Every meeting, every transaction, every favor granted and received. And I've arranged for this information to be released automatically if anyone ever tries to weaponize my case. The American people deserve to know how their justice system really works, and they're about to find out." The video ends with Epstein holding up a thick folder marked "Insurance Policy for the American People." As James watches the screen go dark, she realizes that today's events weren't just political maneuvering. They were the triggering of a dead man's switch, designed to expose the entire system when the system tried to exploit his crimes. And tomorrow, America will wake up to discover that their justice system has been compromised at every level for 2 decades. The president declared war on Jeffrey Epstein's network. Jeffrey Epstein, from beyond the grave, just declared war on the entire American establishment that created and protected that network. And Letitia James, the woman who was supposed to be the victim of political persecution, has just become the guardian of the most explosive evidence in American political history. In the end, the truth doesn't choose sides. It just chooses to be free. And freedom, as America is about to learn, comes with a price that no one in power is prepared to pay. The reckoning has begun, and there's no force on earth that can stop it now.